And good evening, fellow writers and travellers in space and time. It's good to be back. It's Mr. Wager once more. It is Monday. It's time to do some creative stuff. How are you all? It's good to see you. How's the week been treating you so far? It's always good to get Monday out of the way, isn't it? I find it's just absolutely it's one of those things you need to tick off. It's important. You've got to just deal with Monday. Once Monday's out of the way, you kind of feel like you're wading through the rest of it. It's all okay. Anyway, welcome all. I see lots of people making very stupid comments in the chat, which is fairly normal. But there we go. Anyway, welcome to let's do the thing because we have to do the thing. Welcome to Richie. Now you're back once more, my friend. Good to see you. The Harkonnens are here, fresh from the invasion of Arrakis. Commander Glenn Terraferma is here. Wintermute GB is here, of course. Mad Monksoft is here. The Arrakis is here, fending off the invasion of the Harkonnens, which is always good. Kelly Baglar is here as well. Urban Sparks is here. Come on, the Dusktel is here. Biff Boy is here. Six String GGBH is here. That's a good. I love the usernames. The usernames are very creative. Something I really must do. Pay some more attention to. The Shadow Wyvern is here as well. Urban Sparks, I think I mentioned it. So anyway, it's all good. Welcome one and welcome all to this second in my series of basic writing stuff. Okay, and the idea being that we kind of go through some of the essentials really of writing things. Okay, it's quite important. Now, the eagle-eyed, or probably more the eagle-eared. I don't know if you can be eagle-eared. Is that too much of a mixed metaphor? I mean, we know what eagle-eyed means, don't we? But eagle-eared. Will have noticed, anyway, that the intro music has had to change. This is not through my own choice. Something has happened, and I'm not quite sure what. I've tried to contact the person who wrote this piece of music, and haven't had an answer yet. Because what's happened is I've been using this piece of music, which is called Work. Okay, now the website I got it from is famously and used an awful lot by creative people because it's royalty-free music. And it specifically says that it's royalty free as long as you credit the author with, a little banner, or you make sure if you put it in a YouTube video that you credit it. Okay, all that kind of good stuff. So, and that's been fine for years, right? And then suddenly, all of my YouTube videos that have that piece of music at the beginning have been copyright striked, and the copyright strike comes from a company that I don't recognise. That doesn't seem to have anything to do with the company that I've licensed, the author who's written that music. So I don't know what's going on. I'm trying to get some clarification. But until I can find out what it is, I can't use that piece of music because it just causes me aggro. Because when YouTube gives you a copyright strike, it doesn't give you any options other than to dispute it, really. I mean, you've got all other options, which is basically surrender. Or you can fight it. So basically I've fought it, but what's happening is every video I've put up, basically within 5 minutes it goes copyright strike, and then you have to go through the entire process again. It's really a lot of clicks. Okay, so I've now got a cut and paste thing. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm not going to use that piece of music anymore until such time as that gets resolved and I know it's safe to use once more. So it's probably a hostile. It's either YouTube's algorithm has gone wrong, or somebody thinks they own it and they don't. I don't know what's happened. So but anyway, I can't use it at the moment because it's just calling me aggro. Six String says, if you need custom music, Drew, I have you covered. I write music for a living. Oh, well, that might be very nice. I might take you up on that. Let's have a conversation about that one offline. That'd be really cool. Commander Sonak is here as well, and thank you Wintermute for the subscriptions, always good to have. Feather the Crow, it's likely someone doing it illegitimately, someone did every Destiny video ever and the Bungie are now suing them. Okay, so anyway, so I've for all the videos, I mean, and there's probably hundreds of my videos have got that piece of music at the front because it's the intro thing I've been using since about 4 years ago. So somebody is slowly working through all my YouTube videos and giving me copyright strikes, which is just a faff because every time I get up, I get a whole bunch of emails saying you are being accused of. It's like, yes, all right. Copy paste, click, 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 copy paste, click, click, click. But anyway, there we go. So that's the explanation. Just so I don't get any more, I'm changing the music for the time being. Hopefully, it will be back because it's a perfect piece of music. For what I was trying to do, and it actually specifically says this is ideal for podcasts and streaming in the description of that piece of music. I don't know what's going on, but I'm trying to clarify the situation. So apologies, I randomly selected a piece of music that sounded vaguely okay as a kind of intro piece of music, but otherwise it was kind of I couldn't do anything without getting these wretched copyright strikes. But there we go, never mind. Nice hat. I've been wearing a hat like this. This is my hat. I've been I've been wearing this hat for a long time. It's all part of the hat pin. It's a sort of Celtic thing. The hat pin. Actually, it's quite hard to see that if you can quite make it out. There you go. Is it going to focus? There you go. Yeah. It's a sort of Celtic hat pin. Is it Celtic? It's Celtic, isn't it? Not Celtic. Celtic is a football club. Celtic. Might get a copyright strike for the hat. JL9 here is here as well. Anyway, so we're not too much further ado because obviously there's always a bit of a do when it comes to things that I do. Tonight's stream is going to be again a repeat. We're kind of re-going over some old material a little bit for the benefit of people who are coming new to things and wanting some basics about writing. Things that I've kind of learned along the way. And in this particular one, I'm going to do what I did last time. This is 4 years ago since last did this. I'm going to take a piece of my own writing, okay, from a long time ago, in a galaxy far. No, that's called plagiarism. Don't do that either. That's a bad thing. I'm going to take a piece of my own writing and I'm going to rip it to shreds live on stream. It's even color coded, so yeah, that's how much effort I put into it. To show you how many mistakes I made back in the day, and how much I've learned about writing since, and things that you can therefore avoid if you start writing. I might get copyright striked from a previous. Can I copyright strike myself? Dear. Apologies for missing last week's stream, says Journal. Caught up on YouTube, but the home situation at the moment isn't conducive to stream watching and writing. Ow. Okay, well, hope this is clears up for you, Journal. Not good to hear that. But is this Olite stuff? Yes, it is, Richie. I'm pinching one of my old Olite stories. Okay, so this is just before Torn, and in fact, I've had a look at Torn, and it needs work by my modern standards. So this is the thing, and I mentioned this last week on the stream. Okay, I mentioned this on the stream last week, that you can't decide tomorrow to be a brilliant writer, right? Like you can't decide to be a brilliant piano player. You can't decide to be an award-winning violinist. You just can't. You might like the idea of being able to do that, but it's not actually possible. Okay, you can only decide to get better at it. And you can have a certain amount of talent and you can have a certain amount of ability to start with. But you can always get better than you were the day before by practicing and critiquing and learning. Okay? So the best writers really are the ones that keep going and keep getting better. And I'm at the point now that I will fix things as I'm going along because I go, I can't do that. That's awful. It's just stream of consciousness stuff coming out. And I instantly auto-fix some things as I'm kind of writing because I recognise it straight away as, nope, that's bad. Whereas back in the day, as you'll see, I didn't. There's all sorts of dreadful things going on. And if I can point them out for you guys, then hopefully you kind of won't make those mistakes. Or at least you can learn it and use it as a reference of things not to do. Okay, things not to do. So this isn't all that long ago, okay? So, complete disclaimer. How old am I now? I've forgotten. I'm 50 something. What am I? 51. I don't know. It all gets a bit of a blur after a certain age. So yeah, 52 this year I will be in August. And I'm 51 at the moment, therefore. When this was written, okay, this particular thing we're going to look at is a short story. Was written 10 years ago, okay? Well, actually, no, a bit more than 10 years ago, 12 years ago, so 2010. Okay, now in 2010, I was 39, going on 40. Okay, so I'm not like young, I'm not inexperienced. I'm a man of the world, I've got a proper job. I've got some experience in writing by this point, okay? My first thing that I ever wrote kind of seriously was dated 2006, I think. So I've been writing for 4 years, not professionally at that point, but, churning out some stuff. And I've been writing since childhood, okay? So I'm just sort of setting the context here. So this is probably a good few years into my writing journey, but now about 10 years ago, okay? Unconsciously referencing stream of consciousness. So it's just to put it into context, okay? So and by no means am I saying that now at the age of 51 I am the best writer there ever is going to be, okay? That is very much not true. But I hope I've avoided and learnt some of the key kind of amateurish pitfalls that you can fall into as a writer, okay? And things that will scream to an editor or scream to an agent or scream to a publishing house, amateur, avoid, and you don't want those if you've got aspirations to be serious at writing, okay? That's kind of the point. That's the purpose of the stream, if you like. So with no further ado, let's go and have a look at this shambolic piece of work by Mr. Drew Wager from years ago. Here we go, right. Okay, so this is a short story called Ascension. Now this is actually quite important to me, this particular one, because for those of you who've read and enjoyed my Shadewood saga, this is kind of where it started. And this short story isn't Shadewood, but it's not really directly related to Shadewood at all, but it's kind of got the kernel of the idea of what Shadewood eventually would be in it. And interestingly enough, and I hadn't realised this at the time, but when I went back and looked at it a little while ago, I suddenly realised that the character names in this story are the ones in the Shadewood books. And I was like, oh, I hadn't realised I'd used them again. It's funny sometimes you reuse things in your own work without necessarily realising it. Okay, so... so the idea sorry Cyril, for the purposes of these streams I'm trying to avoid some waffle, okay? But I can't guarantee there won't be little detours down memory lane or whatever it happens to be as we go along. It's just one of those things. So this is Ascension. So this is this is the Word document, clearly. We'll talk a little bit about tools in another stream, okay? Which tools should you use? Does it matter? Is there a preference? Blah 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 blah. What I have done is I've gone back over this story. I've left the story verbatim as I wrote it. I haven't edited it again. What I've done is I've color coded and so I can highlight all the issues that this story has in what was its final form. Okay, so this isn't a first draft, this isn't a second draft, this is how I decided back in 2010. Yep, that's good enough, I'm done, I'm finished, it's a perfect story. Okay, just to show you how much hopefully I've learned in the interim. So hopefully you can all see that okay. Now the first thing just to note about this is when you do publish something, even if you're writing something that you don't intend to sell, okay, do make sure you license your work, okay? You don't need to splash the word copyright all over it because technically you own the copyright by the fact of the virtue of you having written it. But if you are going to put it on the internet, I would suggest, it doesn't mean it can't be altered, but it's just a little bit hard to do. Put it out as a PDF or an ebook. Don't obviously put it out as a Word document because obviously people can edit that even better. But do make sure you license it. Okay, now this was licensed using Creative Commons, which is a very common way of licensing things on the internet. Basically, what this license is basically saying is that if you want to download and read this book, you can. It doesn't cost you anything. It's non-commercial. That's the first thing. Apologies for the space birds in the background there. They're definitely doing their thing this evening. If you do want to do anything with this novel, you have to attribute it to the original author. So you have to basically say it's a Drew Wager story. Okay, you're not allowed to do anything commercial with it. Okay, and if you do want to distribute this as part of something else potentially or anything else, you must distribute whatever you create in the same manner as this is licensed. So therefore it has to be non-commercial, and you must attribute it to Drew Wager. So Creative Commons, if you don't know about it, is a mechanism for you to put a license on your work, okay, that allows you to control, at least have a framework for how you control what happens to your piece of work when it goes out into the wild. Okay, so as you can see here, this is an old one. It's been up to, I think it's version 4, possibly even further on by now. You must give credit to me. You can't use this for any commercial purposes. And if you build, alter or transform upon this work, you must redistribute the resulting work only under a license identical to this one. You can contact me if you want to change any of that and pay me lots of money. Nobody ever has. License your work. Don't just leave it blank, okay? Because then you're kind of into a weird space of people could say, well, I found it and it's not attributed, so I can do whatever I like with it. And if you did write something natty and short that somebody picked up and thought, this is actually rather good, if you haven't licensed it at all, somebody can go and use that kind of and make money with it, and you won't be able to pull back any credit for it because there's no license associated with it. Now, most reputable places wouldn't do that because it's against the law. But if you can't prove it, it's hard. So license it. Go to Creative Commons. It's dead simple to choose the license you want. You can basically copy and paste a bunch of text into the front of your document. Job done. Okay, just do it. Just do it. Okay, so I commented. What I do. Here's another thing. When you write stuff, I find this very, very useful later on. Write a few notes about why you wrote the thing. Okay. I always write an author's note in my books, mostly to remind myself what I was doing and why I was doing it at the time. So it's just one of those things I do. So this is just tells you a little bit. This short story was originally written back in 2010. I've already explained this. And it was an early attempt to juxtapose religion, science and space, and can be considered the inspiration by the Shaman saga. There we go. And interesting enough, Kiri and Maru first appear here. So characters that you'll know from my Shaman saga do appear in this story. They're not the same characters. They're just kind of the same names. And it's a bit similar, right? But it's not actually Shaman. So a note to myself here, I've deliberately not edited it again. Okay, so this was as it was in 2010 for me. By now in 2022 I can see a lot that needs improvement, but this will serve as an exercise, hence this stream this evening, right? So according to my notes, I originally wrote an extra bit at the end to indicate what happened, but I decided to remove it because it changed the point of view from where it had been during the rest of the story. And as a result, if you actually read the story, it's up to you to determine what the story is actually about. Okay, so right, let's delve in. Okay, now what I've done is I've color coded the errors. Okay, for ease of use. So here we go. So green is kind of extraneous stuff that shouldn't be in the text. So there's the first thing. All right. So we're it's a short story. I don't know how many words it is. It's 4,000. Okay, so it's actually quite a lot of text for a short story, but if you take out the intro bit that I've written, it's probably about 4,000 words. Kiri and Maru first appeared here until the Humans' Right Act forced me to remove all Maru content. Egregious cruelty. People haven't forgiven me for what I did to poor Maru. I don't think he was the worst. I mean, come on. I did pretty nasty things to lots of people, which is maybe not what I should be admitting on stream. But anyway, so here we go. So the idea at the beginning of the story is there's two main characters in the story, so you've got to get them into the front of the frame fairly fast. Okay, that's scene setting. So Kiri smiled at Maru's clumsy attempts to control his herd. Nothing wrong with that sentence. Okay, so there's two characters. You've already got the impression that Kiri's amused by the fact that Maru can't handle whatever creature this is that he's on. So okay, we'll figure out what a herg is in a bit. Okay, then there's this to be fair. It's like, to be fair? To whom? All I need there is it was newly broken in and still a young beast. Okay, so basically any decent editor is going to go slash with that, to be fair. Why does it need to be there? Challenge the words is the first thing you need to do. Challenge the words. You want your... You don't inflate your sentences just to make them kind of a bit more verbose. So I'm very, very bad at this, as in draft. So there's an example. Just get rid of it. Okay, if you don't need it, what does it add? Does it add anything? To be fair to who? To be fair to what? Are you the reader? To Kiri, to Maru? It doesn't make any sense. Why is it there? I have no idea why I wrote it. Okay, all we need is it was newly broken in and still a young beast. Yet Maru was not the best of riders, and the Herg seem to be aware of that. That's kind of okay. So just unverbose it. Yeah, exactly right, Glenn. Unverbose it. Here's another one. Here's passiveness. Okay, here's another one. This is bad writing. Passiveness. Maru almost slipped off. Okay, yeah. Almost slipped off? Did he slip off or not? Be far better to write here. Maru did in fact slip off, because almost slip off implies kind of, what are you trying to say there? Maru slipped off, grabbing the third exposed vertebra just in time to steady himself. That would be better. Okay, so anywhere you've got almost or not quite or a bit of, do you really need it? Because either it's kind of happened, so Maru slipped, grabbing it's more punchy. Okay, it's more punchy. Always try and make it punchy. Remove all of the unpunchiness. Okay, yeah. So you can make it. You can instantly see better ways of doing it. Okay, here's another one. Okay, here's another extraneous one. He snapped. Okay, snapped is a bad choice here anyway, and we'll talk about the ways you can say they said. There's only two characters, okay, in this story at this point anyway, and we've got Kiri and we've got Maru. I don't need that, because we know Kiri was speaking a moment ago, so the he snapped is totally superfluous. Again, anything that is superfluous, slash, okay, get rid of it, slash, get rid of it, because it's obvious. It's Maru getting annoyed. And another point on this one is he snapped. Well, you could help. It's fairly obvious what Maru's kind of voice is saying at this point in time. See, we don't need that snapped on the end, because the dialogue should be good enough to carry the emotive point that you're trying to make, which means that is doubly needing cutting out, because A, we don't need it because we know it's Maru, and B, we don't need to tell the reader that he snapped, because it's very, very clear from what he's basically said in the dialogue box. Okay, and yeah, okay, so and here's another thing. I haven't done it here. I should. Okay, right. Here's the other thing, and I'm very bad. I was very bad at this. Okay, exclamation marks. Right. Look how many. There we go. I've done them 3 times already on the first page. That is wrong. Okay. You're allowed one of those every 1,000 words. That's the rule. Okay. That's the Drew Wager rule of exclamation marks. Is you allowed one exclamation mark every 1,000 words, and that's it. Okay. An explanation point is. I see. Well, that's different as well. Don't overdo this, otherwise it just makes you look like you're texting the book. Okay. Wow, says Urban Spark. Yeah, and that's even worse. Don't ever in a piece of text use more than one exclamation mark. Okay. Just oh my God. Everyone's quickly going, really? Said Maru. So don't. Okay, it just looks amateurish. Okay, basically you have full stops, exclamation marks, question marks. Just use one, okay, and don't use too many exclamation marks, because it just looks like you're shouting all the time, and you're really wearying the reader. The reader's going, whoa, whoa, whoa. Okay, just don't. All right, that's really bad writing. Don't use a lot of exclamation marks, because it makes you sound like you're Captain Kirk trying to write a book. What about italicized? Oh, we'll get on to italicized things in a bit. Okay, so so this is stuff that's jumping. We haven't even got off the first page. Okay, so this is how bad it was. So here's the next one, okay? Adverbs. You've heard me talk about adverbs before, okay? Kiri dismounted her herd. I'm not sure if dismounted is actually quite the right word either, but I'll roll with that for the moment. And walked quietly across to Maru. Now I think this is adverbs. I think my intention here is to kind of show that Kiri is a bit of a, she's quite dainty. She's quite, at least this Kiri is. The Kiri in Shaman isn't, obviously, but this Kiri is she. I'm trying to get across the idea that she was a bit dainty, but this isn't the right way to do it. Okay, she walked quietly across to Maru. What does that mean? Can you walk quietly? It doesn't add anything. This is an adverb. Now most editors, and this is a thing that's gone in and out of vogue over the decades. Okay, but right now, and if you're wanting to submit your book, your manuscript to a publisher, you got to kill the adverbs. Okay, editors hate adverbs, right? Basically any words ending in ly. Look long and hard at whether you really need them. So does this quietly actually add anything to this sentence? Kiri just mounted the herd and walked across the Maru. What's happening here? Yeah, they need to get closer. They basically have a conversation. Okay. So Kiri just mounted her work and walked quietly across. It doesn't do anything. Adverb, kill it. Okay, kill the adverbs. The bonfire of the adverbs. So this was the Kiri from Shaman. She'd have smacked the with her stick. She would have done, yes. I think dismounted is a legit word, but you could make it more. I could, yeah. It's probably I would probably nowadays say Kiri jumped down from a herg, and move across. So does it work rhythmically? Dismounted the herg and walked. I don't know. I don't like it now. I think it's technically correct, but I think I could write that sentence better. This next sentence is quite good. Okay, I think a touch and a soft whisper, and the herd was calm a moment later. Okay, so that's quite nice. So Kiri's got away with animals. Fine. Okay, that's okay. How do you do that? Maru demanded. This kind of does need a Maru did something on it, because Maru was the last person to speak. It could, from the context, it's pretty clear that it's Maru speaking, but you can argue that the clarification there is okay. Maru is kind of coming across as short-tempered here, so that maybe is okay as well. Now here's your classic piece of writing. Okay, so here's me labouring the point. This is really bad writing again. All right. Kiri shrugged. She'd always been good with animals. I should have stopped there. Okay, I should have stopped there. Kiri shrugged. She'd always been good with animals. Full stop. Stop. But no, I had to plough on and layer it on. She understood them better than people. Okay, well, maybe that's okay. Animals never lied and deceived, unlike people. Okay, so what I was trying to do here is imply, Kiri's got a chip on her shoulder, right? But what I've done here is your classic piece of bad writing, which is show, don't tell, all right? Or in this case, tell, haven't shown. Because what I've basically done is I've dropped into not the dialogue, not really the description, just narrator omniscient thing. Kiri's got a chip on her shoulder, everybody. Have you got that? Which is bad writing, okay? I need to show this. In fact, this whole thing nowadays I would get rid of all of that, okay? I would just put Kiri shrugged. And leave it to you, the reader, to figure out, okay, why isn't she answering that question? She's obviously got a bit of a talent with the animal. Why is she just shrugging it off? Maybe she doesn't think much of it. Leave it to you, the reader, to figure out why Kiri's got this. But no, what I've done here, this is very, very bad writing, is I've told you she's got an issue with people. Okay, I haven't left you, the reader, with the ability to go and figure that out for yourself. I've basically spoilt the plot already a bit. Okay, yeah. Hello, reader. It's the author here. Just letting you know this. Okay. That's exactly what you mustn't do. All right. So this is bad. Okay. Animals never lied and deceived, unlike people. Subtle hints are here again. Okay. So you must let the reader figure out. Your readers are smart people. Well, some of them are anyway. Some of them are really strange, let's be honest. But anyway, okay, so the idea being that your readers are smart people. They will figure it out from the clues that you give them. So what I haven't done here is I haven't yet really given you a clue, even the stupid readers. You see, what I haven't done, what I need to do is I need to drop something into the dialogue, perhaps, shortly after this or before this, to basically give you, the reader, a clue that Kiri doesn't like people. I could say something, rather than Kiri shrugged. She could just say, "I prefer animals. I like animals. In fact, I prefer animals." She could just say that, and that would leave you, the reader, with, okay, so she likes animals, doesn't really like people, okay? Or animals understand me, exactly clear on me. So good suggestions, okay? That's good writing. Leave it in the dialogue, make it short and snappy, and make you go, okay, so Kiri likes the animals, but maybe she doesn't like people. So is Maru her friend, or is she, what's the score here? Those are the sort of things that you want the reader to be trying to figure out from your story. Don't tell them the answer like I did there. That's bad. Okay, so that's another thing. That's good. Okay, so here's even more stuff, right? Why have you brought me all the way up here anyway? Maru demanded. Okay, so here's another thing that an editor will quickly go for. Demanded. Don't put the same word in close proximity to the same word. Okay, there are exceptions to this, so things like you can't really avoid that, okay, or and, or connective words like that those aren't a problem. But if words that can be replaced, this should just be an ask, okay. Try not to echo, because it's one of those things that trips a reader up when they're reading, and it's not wrong, but it's something you can fix without too much effort, that just allows the reader to not notice the word repetition. Okay, so try and avoid that. An editor will go, that's not really good. Okay, don't have those words in close proximity, because it just looks amateurish again. Don't do that. Okay, here's here's another piece that I don't need. In fact, I should flag that. Okay, here's more. Show don't tell don't show. Maru demanded stretching out his back and rubbing his posterior. Okay, so stretching out his back and rubbing his posterior is a reasonable piece of description. Okay, so clearly he's a bit saddle sore, he's a bit tired. Then I go and say, "It's been a long ride." Has it really? Is that why his back's sore? I wonder. I don't need that. Okay, don't labour the point. Okay, don't labour the point. I've basically told you, the reader, that with that sentence there. There's a very, very strong, and I do it. I've done it here, as you can see. It's a very, very common thing for newer writers to what I call overwrite, because they think, has the reader got it? Has the reader got it? Do they get it? Because I'm going to labour the point. Don't labour the point. Okay. So bring it all back. Rubbing his ass. Well, we've discussed ass, haven't we, in the past, Glenn? British people can't say ass properly. We have to say arse, which just doesn't sound right. Don't overwrite. Okay, you don't need to. People have got it. Okay, so if you've basically implied they've come a long way, you don't need to tell the reader they've come a long way. What was so important? Now here's a style thing. Okay, nowadays, I would put that piece of dialogue on a new line. Now this is a style thing, which you may or may not agree with. It's up to you. I now much prefer, and I do it in all my stories, the moment a piece of dialogue crops up, new line. Okay, new line. It's just easier to see. So I'm not going to save this document here, by the way. It's just easier to read. Okay, it's just easier to read, I think, and the dialogue stands out a bit more when it's on its own line. It's not wrong to have it there, but it kind of almost visually gets lost in the text flow. I mean, obviously I've got all these colours on the screen which wouldn't be there in the final manuscript, but it's not as obvious. So I much prefer to do it. Now that may be a style thing, that you can disagree with. It's also something that you may come across the concept of house style. And particular editors and particular publishing houses will have a house style, the way they like things done, and that will be fonts, sizes, spacings, whether or not you use a single quote or double quote for dialogue. All those sort of things can be affected by house style. Okay, but whatever you do be consistent with it. And Oxford commas, no, slap. We're not having the Oxford commas around here. New line may imply a different speaker. Well, it can do. I tend to, if there's any ambiguity, if I'm reading back through it, and I feel there's any ambiguity, I will put in a descriptor to tell you who's talking. But that's quite a common thing. So just be consistent and see if you can do it. One thing that again is quite again, if this wasn't color coded, this would be quite a good example anyway. This is. Even if I wasn't going to cut this out, which I would now, this entire paragraph here is quite big, okay? Big, massive, great big paragraphs of text where there is no indent because it's basically one massive long paragraph. A reader, particularly nowadays actually, it's even worse nowadays, a reader may look at a huge, great big paragraph and go, oh, really, I've got to wade through that? And they may visually skim it. And you don't want them to do that. So if you can break your paragraphs up into shorter chunks, then do. Don't go out of the way to do it, but be aware that anything more than sort of 5, 6, 7 lines of total paragraph length is a lot for a reader to absorb. Bear in mind that I'm writing here on an A4 piece of paper in Times Roman 12. When it gets put in the book, it's even... it gets compressed a bit. So even a 5, 6, 7 line paragraph on A4 paper will be even longer in a book. Okay, and as a result, a big paragraph can be quite visually off-putting, regardless of how good your words are. The sheer size of a paragraph on a page can be off-putting. So bear that in mind. I was reading that. Okay, so right, so international writing. So one thing we ran across with international writing, the UK single quotes used for dialogues, in the US double quotes generally. That's going to change depending on where you are, which country you're in, and which style you're using. It's not a hard and fast rule. Okay, so bear that in mind. There will be a house style. On the flip side, says Major 69 Chord, how do you know you're not underwriting by using many implications? Okay, well that comes down to your alpha readers. Okay, so you've got to satisfy yourself as the writer that you've done the right thing. Okay, then you need to talk to editors and talk to other writers, readers who are prepared to give you some critique. That's the only way to be sure. If you get the feedback, I'm a bit confused by this character, I don't know where they're coming from, okay, because I just don't know enough about them to make a decision, then you probably haven't got enough work in there. Okay. So let's crack on. Okay, so there's a whole bunch of rubbish here. Okay, so Kiri silenced him with a wave and put a finger to her lips. Okay, so it's basically shut up. Okay, so here's more tell don't show. Right, she was like that. She spoke often with her hands and her voice. Maroon knew better than to hurry, or she could never be rushed. Okay, that's just sheer useless, pointless telling. Okay, that all needs to go. Right, that mustn't be there. She was actually this one. I'm not sure why I highlighted that. That kind of is okay. So I'm going to switch that back in. What was she doing at the time? She's looking up into the heavens. Okay, her gaze. She's looking at a winking star. Now the winking star becomes important later on. Okay, so that's okay. But this whole bit here is totally irrelevant. Okay, that's me telling you that she's a bit. She doesn't talk very much. She's quite withdrawn. She can't be rushed. Okay, so I'm trying to get across what she's like, but I'm doing it in the wrong way. Okay, I'm telling you what she's like. That's not a good way of doing it. I should show you what she's like by the ways that she acts. Okay, so here's more exposition. All right, Miru counted herself as her friend, one of very few. Okay, so how I'm just. This is called an info dump. All right, this is a bad piece of writing as well. Okay, so Miru counted herself as his friend, one of very few, but in truth he didn't know her very well. Okay, so what I'm trying to do here is basically saying Kiri is a bit out of place. She doesn't fit in very well. And even to the friends that she does have, she's a bit of an enigma. That's what I'm trying to get across. That's what I had in my mind at this stage. But basically, all I've done is I basically told you that. Okay. And as a result, that's bad writing. Okay, that's bad writing. That's telling, not showing. And then compound it by just giving you a lot of, basically this is classic info dumping. Okay, so here's basically the potted history of Kiri in this story. She was one of those people who could be around for a long time, and if someone asked you some basic questions about her, you'd find it difficult to answer them. Maru knew little of her background, her family, or even her ambitions. She was small, neat and aloof, methodical in everything she did. She'd come to the cathedral to study, and that was that. So okay, massive info dump. Don't do massive info dumps, all right? Okay, it's kind of not important. Okay, do we need to know that? Does it really help? We already know she's a bit odd. Okay, we already know she's a bit odd. We already know, she's good with animals but doesn't like people. At least we should have done by this point. Etc. 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 Okay, so don't info dump. Info dumping is bad. Okay, if you find you're needing to info dump, you've probably missed something in your dialogue or your setup that you probably need to go back and have a think about. Just add a bit more dialogue in that just basically says something along the lines of. In this, I mean, how would I get this in nowadays? I'd have a bit of dialogue that basically said something along. Are you ever going to, bring it into the conversation? Are you ever going to tell me about what you did before you came to the cathedral? No, it would be something. Dialogue is a really good way to get across what the character's like. Okay, because you can make quite quick determinations as a reader about what the character's like by the way they answer questions or the way they don't answer questions, all those sort of things. Okay, all those sort of things. Again, more and more. Look at this. This is really bad for the old adverbs. What do you think it is? She asked, suddenly turning around. How do you suddenly turn around? You turn around, right? And gazing directly at him as opposed to not looking at him directly. I mean, it doesn't add anything. So this is amateurish writing. Just turn around, okay? In fact, this is also slightly passive, turning around. Turning around here implies that she hasn't actually completed the turn. She asked, the better way to write this would be, what do you think it is? She asked. I suppose turning around actually without the comma. I would nowadays, what do you think it is? I would just leave it there. She turned around and looked directly at him. Yeah, so it's almost like an accusatory kind of a stare. It's like, what do you think it is? She's very abrupt. Okay, so you're getting abruptness from this girl as well. So all those sorts of things. Okay, so avoid that. Here's a bit. I mean, this is a bit of me just going a bit poetic. Oh, she's got large brown eyes. Oh, isn't that sweet? Yeah. Now, you may have ways to introduce your character foibles. Okay, and they are important. Okay, so if your character, what you're trying to get from the reader is how do we differentiate between characters? Now, some writers will go into lengthy descriptions of exactly how tall they are and how wide they are, and lots of male writers who are not very good will go on to bust measurements and chest measurements and waist measurements and stuff. Don't do that, for God's sake. Okay, that just screams. I don't know what it screams. It assumes something very bad about you. Okay, don't do that. All right. If you're going to pick some attributes. All right. If you're going to pick some attributes to pull out about your character, no, don't do emotional cleavage either. None of that. Okay. Don't. What was it? Don't boob breastily down the stairs and things like that. Okay. Just don't. There is, by the way, on that particular, there is no particular reason why a man cannot write a female character, and obviously by converse, why a woman can't write a male character. However. And however here is in capital letters. For God's sake, don't be just don't embarrass men, all right, when you're writing female characters, because women do not breast boobily down the stairs, all right. Their breasts are not in well, they are animate objects, but they're not sentient creatures. Okay. So just, some male writers have real problems with this. Don't go there, okay, is my advice. Just don't, all right? Because you just look stupid. Let's be honest. And the curve of the bosom, just don't, okay? Just that's not the way to write a female character. Okay, so I've written at least 5 female characters in this new script and never discussed breasts. Well, exactly. Okay, exactly. Stay away from that sort of stuff. Okay. In fact, Haunted Loaf is quite right. Make sure you actually met a woman before you write a female character. It's very good. And the same applies conversely. Actually, I've found some female writers, and there's a brilliant Reddit page actually called Men Writing Women, where some of the worst examples of that sort of stuff are shared, and they are very, very amusing. Okay, but I've found in published books really, really bad male characters written by women, just as much. So you do a bit of research, and I mean research in a in a kind of wholesome, non-creepy sort of a way. Okay. Don't follow women around and observe them with, I'm just a writer. Don't do that either. That will get you into trouble really fast. You say his eyes drunk in the glisten on the pale moonlight on her curves, like dunes in the Sahara Desert. It's like, unless you're writing something and you're kind of like lampooning it. Okay. So just that is a bit of a minefield. Stay away from it. Okay. So that's the thing. But if you are going to choose some action, now you'll notice in my books is I do focus on eye colour and hair colour to differentiate my characters. So I like you. I'm trying. You are trying to paint a bit of a picture of a character, and to me, what they look like from a kind of fairly generic perspective. So it's not really a gendered description. Okay, it's eye colour, hair colour. I find personally quite a good way to differentiate characters. So in this case, Kiri's got large brown eyes. Well, then I think she ended up with large brown eyes in Shadewood. I can't remember. So those things can be useful, but large brown eyes here is a bit too kind of cutesy. And a bit kind of like, oh, isn't she nice? So be careful. Don't labour the point. I think I would take out the large now, or perhaps maybe this is probably not a good point to mention the brown eyes. To be honest, it's kind of, it does sort of invoke the anime, which looks a bit twee in this story. I don't think it really adds anything here. Given that you've only got 2 characters, I almost don't need that sort of stuff at this point. So there we go. Can I go there with Mills and Boone stuff? Obviously, yes. Yeah, the Mills and Boones is. If you're writing, you see, this is a genre thing. Okay, depending on your genre, there may be certain things that your readers expect now. And I think if you're writing a romance novel, I don't think it's unreasonable for your readers to want a bit of, okay, what does this guy or what does this girl look like? Are they my type of person? Am I going to be able to go, oh yes, I can understand how he feels or how she feels in this situation, looking at this gorgeous hunk of a man or this voluptuous silhouette of a woman standing in the moonlight. Yeah, I can kind of understand that. Okay, what you've got to do is find the balance for what you're writing. Okay, if it's important that the reader understands that there is a physical attraction between 2 characters, whether it's actually amorous or whether it's just lustful or whatever it happens to be, then that may be something you need to consider. Do you need to communicate that to the reader that one character is subtly attracted to another one? Yeah, you may need to do that. That may be important for the scene, but don't do it just because you want to describe describe things because it's fun. Things like that. Okay. Adverbs again. There's all sorts of adverbs going on. This isn't good. Yeah, he smouldered smolderously in the smouldering sunlight. Stop it. Why's my phone go? That's my Bixby on my phone has decided. Did I say phone? Just shush. It's not your stream. You are an AI. This is very, very dumb. Just stop. Shh. Stupid phone. Bixby is a critic. Her circular eyes. with the radius of 2.37. Yeah, so there's things you can do which clearly are wrong, but there's things that aren't. Be careful. Okay, be careful. If you're finding yourself, with a catalogue of measurements of various things, you've probably gone too far. And so those. Okay, so the winking star actually in the story is an important thing. So called because it occasionally disappeared. It disappeared. Almost always adverbs don't need to be there. Okay, it shone gently. How can you shine gently? Okay, what does that mean? It shone in the sky. Stars shine in the sky. Okay. Okay, so that's okay. And here, here's a bit of description. Already it was brighter than when they had arrived at the hilltop, its intensity growing as dusk proceeded. That's okay. Okay. Was that Samsung Assistant? I don't know what it was. I don't know why my phone suddenly decided to Bixby, Bimble, Bixen, Billy. And now you know how the Alexa users feel. Alexa, would you like some toast? Okay, so there we go. Right, so again, here is more info dumping. There's better ways of doing this. Don't info dump. And here's the next one. Okay, snapped. I've used snapped a few times. Exactly. Can you shine gently and be brilliant? It doesn't really give you the same vibe, does it? If it's brilliant, it's actually going to be quite harsh, not gentle. It's like, oh, that's quite bright, So, yeah, don't mix. Be careful how you mix things when you're describing things. That's a point. That is a good point, actually. I'm not interested in the words. Kiri snapped. Okay. Almost angrily. It's like, really? Is she angry or not? Yeah. I was very bad at putting these. These modifiers in. Okay. Almost angrily. Yeah. Is she angry or not? In fact, do I even need to put that in? Because I don't need to. You can decide is she angry? Why is she snappy? Do I need the word snapped? Okay. I'm not interested in the word. So now here's an incorrect use of an ellipse. Now ellipse is this 3 dots. Okay. I can't remember actually because I use it wrong all the time as a standard now because I'm allowed to. I've decided, but actually I'm using it here as I still do today to indicate an interruption by the next person who's speaking to the person who's actually being quoted at this point. So what I'm implying here, the words tell us, and I'm not interested in the words. Okay, Kiri interrupts him. So that is a interruption of dialogue. That is not actually what an ellipse is supposed to be like. There was a lunar ellipse last time. Not that. That's the eclipse, you matter. Okay. There is, if you look it up, there's actually, and I have no idea what it is because I'm not really interested, but there is a proper use of an ellipse, and that is not it. Okay. So Richie says, I used to use it to show on someone's attention trait. You can do that as well. Okay. You can use it to, so I was thinking, I wonder if, dot. You can do it that way as well. But I tend to use it to show someone's interrupting. That's my style. Now you can kind of, this is the thing with writing. There aren't always hard and fast rules. Okay, so you've got to be a bit careful. But one thing you must do is be consistent. If you use something one way, always use it that way. All right. But Kiri snap. Okay, so we're going to get rid of the almost angrily. Okay. Oddly enough, there's a good bit of writing here afterwards that makes the bit that I've already done entirely pointless. Her hands clenching and unclenching. So if you see someone who's kind of like that, they're angry, right? Or they're tense, or they're frustrated. That's a good bit of writing. Her hands clenching and unclenching. That implies that Kiri is frustrated. Okay, I don't need any of that actually. Because a half decent piece of writing is buried at the end of that sentence, to basically tell you, the reader, what kind of mood she's in. Ellipses are used ... missing words. There we go. And here's another thing. The reason I've highlighted the snap there in purple is that here comes the thing. The way that you get your characters to communicate. Okay, now the default is he said or she said, or sometimes you don't need anything at all, depending on the situation. Okay, he said, she said, Kiri said, Maru said, whatever you need. Now there is a tendency, and I used to do it a lot, to basically say, well, I can't keep using the word said, so I need to replace said with other things. Okay, now if it's a question, obviously it's you default to he asked or she asked. All right, but the same thing happens there. If you have a lot of questions in dialogue, then they're all asking all the time, and when they're responding, they're all saying or said. Okay, so there's a tendency to try and replace the saids and the asks with other words. Okay, and that's what I've done here. Kiri snapped. Okay, and up here, Maru demanded. Okay, and Maru snapped there as well. Notice, etc., etc., etc. Okay, so the general rule of thumb is that the vast majority of the time, it's okay to stick with said and asked. Okay, you can use other words, but don't try and convey emotion in those words. Is general rule of thumb. Now there are exceptions, and that's up to you to decide when you need to play that card to emphasize a point. But most of the time, you don't need it. Okay. So in this example, the words tell us, my style basically implies Kiri is now interrupting. I'm not interested in the words, is my piece of text. Now that piece of dialogue is strong enough to carry across the fact that Kiri has interrupted Maru. And with this bit on the end here, her hands clenching and unclenching, that tells you, the reader, show not tell, that she is frustrated by something here. Okay, yeah, the whole don't use ejaculated regardless. Now, interestingly enough, that is a word whose meaning has changed dramatically over the last few decades. Ejaculated used to be an expression of surprise. Okay, you'll see it a lot in older literature. If you read adventure tales from the 1940s and 1950s and earlier, you'll see you'll see quite a few people ejaculating. Which just sounds very, very, very wrong, but that's what it used to mean. Okay, and its use has been somewhat subverted in more recent times. Okay, and gay. People being very gay. Years and years and years ago, that meant joyous and happy. And of course, it doesn't now. So language does evolve, and be aware of that. But there's a general rule with these. Okay, if you don't need to modify them, don't. Okay, repeating saids is okay. If there's only two characters in the dialogue, you won't need most of your saids, because generally people take turns in conversations. That's how conversations work. If there are three or more people in the scene, you're going to have to identify which one is talking. There's no way around that. Okay, so don't feel bad that you've got, Mick said, Jane said, John said, Mick said, Jane said, John said, Jane said. You can't avoid it. There might be occasions in there then where you can put the occasional alterations to said if you think the saids are getting too overloading. Okay, but bear that in mind. Don't feel you need to come up with a different interpretation of the word said every single time something new comes up. That's one to avoid. Again, more info dumping here. Internalizing Maru's thoughts. Okay, so here's another thing about that, is that we're in a sort of omniscient viewpoint here. Okay, so and this isn't brilliant writing either. Okay, so in the general flow of this story so far, basically this is an error. Okay, so Kiri smiled at Maru's clumsy attempts to control his herg. Okay, Kiri watched amused as the beast circled on its hind legs, bucking and rearing as Maru coaxed it, reaching it. Okay, so what we're starting off here in Kiri's POV, point of view. Okay, so we should be experiencing the entire scene from Kiri's perspective. Okay, this is very, very important. Okay, for good writing. Okay, again, second paragraph. Kiri watched. We're still with Kiri, so our viewpoint for this scene is through Kiri's senses. So what she sees is what we're getting in the text. What she hears is what we're getting in the text. What she feels is what we're getting in the text. Okay, so she can watch as Maru almost slips off. That's fine. She can hear Maru shout and curse. She laughs. That's fine. Okay. She gets off the hug. That's fine. How do you do that? Maru demanded. She shrugged. That's okay. She silences him with a wave of finger. That's okay. And then suddenly, look. Okay, she was like that. She spoke more with her hands and her voice. Hang on. We're in Kiri's viewpoint. Why would she be thinking that? She wouldn't. It doesn't make any sense. Maru counted herself as suddenly we're in Maru's head. Okay, and there's been nothing telling me as the reader. Well, hang on a minute. We were with Kiri a moment ago. Why have we swapped to Maru? Where are we now? Are we with Maru? Are we with Kiri? Are we sort of drifting above the story? Where are we? Okay, POV is immensely important to good storytelling. Okay, particularly if you've got any ambitions of having your story converted into a visual medium. Okay, where are we seeing this story from? We start off with Kiri's POV. Okay, then we get a bit blurred here. Are we in Maru's POV, or are we in an omniscient narrator POV? Where are we? Where is the camera that's taking the mental image of this scene? Okay, that's where you've got to kind of think. It is a good idea nowadays to visualize your scene from the perspective of a movie. Where are we seeing this scene from? Okay, that's quite an important thing. And people don't tend to like omniscient POV these days. So I write from an omniscient POV quite a lot, but I call it out much better than I have done here. Okay. However, if you start with a character POV, stick with that character's POV until the scene ends. Now, this scene runs for quite a long way. It runs, it's a good 3 pages. No, 4 pages. There's the scene end. Okay, which I've just indicated with a gap. That's actually page 9, and it started way up here on page 5. So it's 4 pages of scene in this case, and the POV has got vague and confused halfway through. So what I should have done is stuck with Kiri's POV. We should see everything from Kiri's perspective. What does she see? What should be going on here is Kiri silencing with a wave and put a finger to her lips. That's fine. But what should happen next? If we were going to keep this bit, we should be hearing Kiri's internal monologue, which was, I wish Maru would shut up and stop talking. He's always prattling on. Okay, because that's Kiri's POV of this scene. That's really, really important. So decide where you're viewing the scene from and stick to it. Okay. Now there are exceptions to that as well, because there can be situations in which the character POV changes in the middle of the scene because sometimes the character dies. Okay. So if you're writing the scene from the perspective of a victim, and the victim gets killed in the scene, that viewpoint has to end. Okay. But what you can do, because they're dead, right? But stick with them up until the point they no longer can contribute to the scene, and then very clearly show the reader that you're switching POV. It is okay to switch POV in a scene, but you must tell the reader that you're doing it. Okay. So if in this case, if Kiri had shot Maru with a gun, Maru had killed Kiri with a gun. Let's do it that way. We could be in Kiri's POV up until the point she died, and then Maru stepped over the dead body of Kiri, nudging it with his foot. We're now in Maru's POV. Okay, it's a bit of a drastic example, but okay. So things like that are really important. So here is very muddled. This is generally bad writing again. So we start in Kiri's POV. We end up sort of in Maru's POV, but Maru is, then we step into, and this bit here, we're stepping into a sort of omniscient narrator POV, because, Maru's having a conversation with her. He's very unlikely to suddenly go, you know what, Kiri's a really unusual person. Maru's not going to be thinking that at this point, because he already knows that. This is just a perspective that is beyond both of them. So the POV is kind of shifted to this kind of narrator perspective, which doesn't help either. So it's a very confused piece of writing. Okay, so don't change your POV unless there's a really, really good reason for it. I did this with an early draft of Elite Reclamation. I've mentioned this before, so those of you who know my Elite story, there's and I think I mentioned this last stream, but I'll do it again because POV is really, really important. It's a really easy thing to get wrong. Okay, I had this scene where Salome is in a spaceship which is crashing on a planet. Okay, and she is the only person involved. There's nobody else on the spaceship. Okay, she's sitting in the cockpit of the spaceship. The spaceship is going down. It's mostly out of control. She's trying to kind of wrestle it back on course, and there's flames from the re-entry coming up, and the ship's breaking up around her. Okay, and she's desperately trying to land the ship in close to one piece. That's the scene. Okay. Now I'd written this, and there are flames coming out of the cockpit, and the heat's rising, and she can smell burning, and the seat restraints are cutting into her shoulders of the deceleration. All good stuff. Okay, all good stuff. And there's rumbling noises and horrible crunching, cracking noises, and flames and heat, and good stuff. All right. And then I wrote this scene where all the cargo in the cargo bay comes loose, okay, and it's smashing around the cargo bay, and bulkheads are collapsing, and the doors fly off the back of the ship, and the cargo gets sucked out into space, and there's terrible decompression. Really good stuff, okay. And my editor said, "You can't have that." And I went, "Why not?" He said, "Because Salome can't see it. There's nobody else to witness what's happening in the cargo bay at that point in time. So who's watching this action? No one." Now, you can do that in a TV because you can have a flying camera, okay, that can sit in the back of the ship and watch the whole ship disintegrating. But in a novel, Salome is the viewpoint, okay? Salome is the viewpoint, and she's in the cockpit. All she can hear is some strange noises coming from the back of the ship which don't sound good, okay? So I had to cut the scene correctly. Yeah, editor called me out on it. If I was in an omniscient narrator perspective, I could, okay, but the problem with the omniscient narrator view is you can't get close and personal with the character. What I wanted you to feel in that scene was that Salome was out of control. She doesn't know how to fly a ship. She's got some basic flight training, and that's it. She doesn't know what she's doing. The ship is on fire. It's going down. She's panicking. It hurts. She can see flames burning around her. She thinks she's going to die. I wanted you to get that sense of panic and be with her in the cockpit at that point in time. So my POV choice was correct for the scene. The error I made was trying to bring things into the POV that Salome just simply couldn't have seen. So make your choice of POV very carefully, because you're stuck with it until you can get a major scene change. So that's an important thing about writing good, powerful scenes. Choose the right POV. Okay. So that's good. So viewpoint has to end on death unless you're doing something like Into the Void. Yeah, okay. So if you're doing something weird and metaphysical, that's slightly different. So that's quite good. Again, more and more adverbs, and I've made a little poem here and stuff. But okay, exclamation marks again. Again, 1 per 1,000 words. It's just a rule of thumb. Okay, bear that one in mind. This one's really bad. So there's one there. I've just noticed I haven't even highlighted that one. Let's get that one. Okay, so italics. Here's another one. Okay, italics. If you're going to use italics, and there's nothing wrong with using italics again, but italics generally applies to the reader and almost an aside, okay, to whatever else is going on. So again, if you're going to use italics in your works, use them for use them for the same thing all the time. Don't just italicize things for things. Now, some people will italicize bits of dialogue to emphasize them. I personally don't recommend that. Okay, so you could say, for example, here, an ancient rhyme curing knowledge, but not your thoughts. You could do that, okay, and italicize that, okay, but not your thoughts, okay. So I can kind of see the application of that, because it's kind of showing you, the reader, where the writer meant the emphasis on the sentence to be. I've personally never done that. I don't find it necessary. Hopefully the dialogue that I write is clear enough, okay? But you can do that. You can do verbal stressing if you want to. There's nothing particularly wrong with it. It's not something I do, but decide whether or not you think it's useful to your story. What I've done is I'm using this to indicate there's a sort of piece of dialogue that's being quoted from another source. Okay, that's what this actually means in this particular instance. So this is a piece of dialogue, but it's not a piece of dialogue that somebody is basically saying out loud at this point in the story. What I did in Shadewood, and what I consistently do in my novels now, is I only use italics to think about internalized thoughts. Okay, so Rob's 2610, that's exactly it. Isn't italics used when a character is thinking to themselves? That's what I use it for now, and I only use it for that now to avoid confusion. So what you don't want to do is use italics for more than one purpose, because then your reader is going, is this an internalized thought, or is this what is this? So you've got to be a bit careful how you use them, but use them consistently. Again, that's one thing that's important for this. You can break the rules, but you've got to be consistent in the way that you do things. So I like to use italics as internalized thought nowadays. And in Shadewood, because I had not only the internalized thought, but I also had the mind kind of telepathy style communication that some of the characters had in Shadewood, I used bold italics to indicate that. Okay, so but again, work out your own style and use it effectively. Don't mix and match the way you use particular emphases. So there we go. Oh, so sorry, Wintermute, the profanity filter blocked you, did it? Apologies for that. I don't know how to switch that on and off, I'm afraid. So there we go. Just be consistent. That's a good thing as well. She scowled at him, well recited. She said, her tone indicating disapproval and disappointment. Bad writing. Okay, that's telling again. She scowled at him. She's like, well recited, she said. Probably don't need any of that at all. Well recited. Yeah, it says enough. Okay, if this is the thing. Have confidence in your dialogue. Okay, your dialogue is the place where you should spend an awful lot of time, because that's where you should be getting across the nuances of the conversation that the characters are having. In this case, Kiri is quite sharp-tongued, well recited. She's like, and I've done it here again. Scoffed. Don't need scoffed. The words. Oh, the Canticle of the High Priestess. I assume she's being deliberately antagonistic. I've heard it before. Go on then if you must. You can tell that she's impatient and she's kind of like, yeah, whatever. Okay, by the dialogue. Let the dialogue carry the emphasis. Don't emphasize the emphasis by putting scoffed and then, or in this case, calling it out very, very specifically. Just don't. Okay, this is bad writing. It's basically over egging the cake. Don't do that. And then biting back a rebuttal. It's not unnecessary. It's basically that's showing a lack of confidence in the dialogue that I'm putting together. Okay. So things like that. Have the confidence in your dialogue. It's very important. Again, here's another one. Kira's gazing up with an almost rapturous expression. How do you get to be almost rapturous? What was I thinking? I don't know what I was thinking. So that sort of thing is different. Now these guys are having a conversation on top of a hill. Okay. Now here's another thing: is in your conversations, what's happening here is, okay, to start with, it's kind of okay. So they're right at the top of the hill. There's a little bit of conversation. This bit we're going to cut out. Okay. Then they look up and there's a bit of an interruption to the dialogue. Okay, there's a star. The star becomes important. All right. That's kind of okay. A little bit of an interruption. Okay. Then what happens next is there's a long conversation here. Okay. So Kiri says something. Maru says something. Kiri says something. Maru says something. Kiri says something. Kiri says something again. Maru says something. and then we get back. Okay, she walked to the summit of the hill. Okay, it's important when your characters are having, particularly if there's only two characters in a scene. Okay, and there's back and forth dialogue between the two of them. Other stuff needs to happen to reset the reader to where the heck this is all going on. Okay, so it can be something simple like a gust of wind blew across as the sun began to set, and the dialogue resumes. Okay, or Curie shivered as the temperature dropped, and then the dialogue resumes. Don't just do back and forth dialogue, back and forth dialogue, back and forth dialogue for an entire page without giving the reader some hint that they're no longer in some strange void where the entire scenery has disappeared. Okay, remind the reader of the scenery. Okay, and the other thing is important to stress here, and I've done it. Okay, I've done it kind of okay. Okay, so a little bit poetic with the long black hair, but streaming away from her in a sudden gust of wind. That's kind of okay. It basically reminds you, the reader, that they are on top of a hill and it's a bit exposed up there. Okay, so again, doing those sorts of things helps remind the reader where they are and what's going on. The other thing is we have multiple senses. Okay, we tend to focus on what the characters can see. Okay, so Curie could see the mountains receding into the distance. Maru could see the lake three miles away that they'd walked up from. Okay, all those kind of things. But bring in the other senses as well. So if there's a scent of pollen on the wind, do that. If there's the scent of a brush fire half a mile away, bring that in. If they can hear things, okay, or touch things, Curie grasped leant against a tree and her fingers felt the roughness of the bark. Those sort of things. Okay, add those sort of things. The more senses you can bring into the story, the greater the reader's connection with the characters will be. Don't just rely on what they can see. Bring in the other senses as well, because it makes the experience of reading that bit of the story a bit more fun. Okay. She walked forward to the very summit of the hill. Okay, so were they at the top of the hill to start with? Things like that. Okay, so it doesn't actually say. Does it actually say? Oh, here's a continuity error potentially. Does okay? So Buckingham rearing as Maru coaxed it into reaching the crest of the hill. So technically, they are at the top of the hill. Okay. Maru watches the herd caught sight of the endless ocean. Okay, so that kind of putting you in place. That's okay. So they're at the crest of the hill, and then somehow, and a good editor again would pick this up. Okay, they're at the hilltop again. There it's mentioned again, and then down here she walked forward to the very summit of the hill, implying that they weren't at the top of the hill. So that's not good. Okay, that's basically a continuity error. So she just needs to walk forward because they're at the top of the hill. They can't get to the top of the hill again or move forward to the top of the hill because they're at the top of the hill. So check those things, little continuity errors. Particularly if you don't write linearly, or you don't write in kind of chronological order. I find this a lot now when I jump about, is that people will come in and sit down on a chair, all right, in a scene, and then you'll go and edit that scene and forget that they came in and sat down. And so you'll have a paragraph where suddenly they're looking out of the window, having magically moved from the chair that they were sitting in to the window, and you're like, how did they get to the window when they were sitting in the chair? And if you go back and edit a scene, make sure you edit it as a whole, and check that the characters, were they sitting down as they entered the scene, and are they still sitting down? Because if they've suddenly teleported across the room, your reader's going to go, did I miss something? Is what's happened here? And it's very, very, very easy to introduce continuity errors when you're writing. Okay, and I've done it when someone's waving a sword, and then the next moment the sword's disappeared. Okay, where did the sword go? Oops, they were holding a sword, weren't they? Then I've got to rewrite that now because I've sort of magicked the sword into oblivion. So all little things like that, continuity checks in terms of what things are in the scene, where are the people standing, is it consistent throughout the scene? All those sort of things. And is there an exam on all of this, Drew? Not a writer, I'm a reader. And find yeah. So what you notice as you the more you read, the more you notice things like this where other writers have got it wrong. Okay, and it's hard to be perfect on these things, but these are the sort of things that separate the amateurs from the professionals, okay? Because a professional writer should be able to manage to do all of this stuff correctly. Not necessarily in the first draft, okay, because the first draft is really you just getting the story out of your head and onto a piece of paper or into a computer file, okay. But second draft, third draft is where you should be going through your document and fixing all of these kind of issues, is, you know, adverbs, POV, consistency checks, all those kind of things. It's all part of the professional job of writing, all right. So, you know, this is something that I thought was okay back in 2010, and it clearly isn't. It's got loads of examples of bad amateurish writing in it, which nowadays I would pick up and fix. Okay. So again, a lot of it's you know, the whole tell rather than showing. Maru conceded the point and then gently presented his definitive argument. Like, I don't need to tell the reader that. Let the reader make up their own mind as to whether this is the definitive argument. Okay. After you get used to this kind of proofing and editing and critiquing, it makes it hard to read other stories about those things jumping out. It does. Okay. So the more, this bear in mind that the more of a writer you become, the more of a critic you will be, because you'll look at stuff and go, "No, that's a plot hole. That's bad writing. That's show don't tell." Well, they've used a bunch of adverbs in there, the rotters. You know, you will spot these things, and you know, we become people that you really don't want to go to the cinema with, because. But it is sometimes hard to spot it in your own work, which is why you do need other people to take a look at your stuff and then give you the critique back. Okay, it's quite important. Okay, so I'm going to spin forward a bit because most of the stuff here is kind of the same. Okay, now there's a change in this scene towards the end. Okay, so this is you know, up until this point it's been two characters on a hilltop. It's kind of late in the evening. They're alone. They're just the two of them. They're having a chat. Kiri has got a bit of a chip on her shoulder. We've established that now. Maru's kind of like indulging her, trying to get out of her what's going on, what's she upset about, and what's she concerned about. And then something happens here at the end of the scene. Okay. Okay, so Maru didn't respond. This time it was he who gestured. He pointed, his hand trembling as it rose to indicate something behind her. Okay, something's happening here. Okay, something out of the ordinary. Okay, so just before that, something caught his attention. He looked up, frowning. Okay, nothing wrong with that. That's okay. The whole system is wrong, she concluded. Yeah, so Kiri's been going off on one, and then. This will be a conversation familiar to any married man. Are you listening to me? Maru didn't respond. So, and this bit here is kind of superfluous. He wouldn't do this. Okay, something. Basically, what's happening? Something weird is happening in the sky that they don't know what's going on. So they should be shocked and kind of like stuck. Okay. And Kiri turned, so that bit could go, just be replaced by this. Are you listening to me? And she turned and then, gasped. Near the winking star was another star, okay, slowly, don't need slowly, moving away from its neighbour in the heavens. As they watched, it grew brighter and took on a slightly greenish hue. It's a greenish hue is fine, okay, dump the adverbs. A garish, unpleasant colour, much unlike the soft reds and oranges that characterise their planet, okay. Now, okay, so something weird's happening in the sky. Okay, too many exclamation marks, and so something unusual is happening. Now, what I should be doing here, which I haven't done, and a good editor would basically say, is cut to the chase faster, Drew. Okay, something weird is happening. This is upsetting the gentle pace of the scene so far. Okay, so if something weird is happening in the sky, the characters are basically, they should be more nervous, okay, because this is something that's outside of their experience. It's unusual, it's unexpected, it's weird. Okay, there's a weird thing going on in the sky, but Kiri's kind of like imagining what it might be, and there's noise in the way, and then here's more delaying tactics on behalf of me, the writer. It's coming this way! Exclamation mark. Get rid of the exclamation mark. Maru gasped. Don't need gasped, but turning about and preparing to flee. This sort of conjures up, cartoons when they when they run on the spot and go. You don't prepare to flee. Either you flee or you're rooted to the spot. Okay, so preparing to flee makes no sense at all. Kiri, we must leave. Kiri, it's really bad dialogue. Okay, that's not how people speak in an emergency. It's coming this way. Run! Is all it should be. Okay, this Maru gasp telling about preparing to flee, it simply just delays the scene. Okay, put on your fleeing shoes. Exactly. It's coming this way. Clearly, I don't know what the hell this thing is. I don't like it. I'm getting out of here. Bye. It tells you exactly what. I don't need this Maru gasp telling about preparing to flee. What does preparing to flee mean? Okay. Here's a question for you, Drew, and the rest of the writers here. When you enter proofreading phase and editing, do you read it on screen or do you need a hard copy? I think that depends on preference. I'm okay with on screen now after long years of doing it. I used to like hard copy, but I don't find I need a hard copy anymore. I do tend to use though. I tend to use in order to make sure there's a context switch from the screen, i.e. the monitor. I format the drafts into ebook versions, so I whack them onto my Kindle, and I use that to read them kind of as books, and I find that I'm much better up at picking errors up that way than I would be if I was reading it on the screen. That's how I do it, but I don't. Again, that's personal preference, I think. So basically, once something exciting and urgent starts to happen in your story, you've got to up the pace. Okay, so they heard two dull claps of thunder, but much better. Thunder crashed far off in the distance. There were no storm clouds. Don't need that. What does that help with? They're not going to be observing the meteorological conditions when strange stuff's happening in the sky. The evening was otherwise quiet. No, we've established that already. We know the evening is quiet. We know that. Just cut to the chase, Drew. The Hergs looked up nervously at the sound. Well, the Hergs looked up at the sound, stumping their clawed feet and cringing their shoulder. I don't need their shoulders raised in alarm. Stamping their clawed feet and cringing would probably do. Okay, so the animals are a bit alarmed. That's okay. There's something weird here. Okay, it's coming this way. That's good. Just leave it like that. Kiri was frozen to the spot in awe. Better to look at it maybe from Maru's perspective and go, Maru's already legged it. Why isn't Kiri behind me? Kiri, what are you doing? Get the sense of urgency. Okay. In a brief instant. What does that add? It's just words. Just start it from there. A terrifying noise rose about them. That's all you need. It's make it happen now. Don't make it happen after a thing. A brief moment later, an exciting thing happened. An exciting thing happened. Okay, that's the way to write it. Don't overdo it. This is kind of too long. It's not bad, but it's overwritten. Okay, a terrifying noise rose about them, an echoing tormentor ripping and shrieking. Okay, well it's not bad, but it's a bit kind of flowery for what is basically a crashing meteor. The volume was astonishing, reverberating from the hills all around them, doubling and redoubling into a cacophony of overpowering mayhem. Well, okay, it's a bit poetic, but maybe it kind of gets the point across. The Hergs panicked and fled, shrieking. That's okay. Kiri and Maru instinctively threw themselves onto the ground. Okay, so no, they just don't delay it. They threw themselves onto the ground because they, as the conflagration passed above them, a wave of heat singed as it raced past, the noise dropping in pitch dramatically. Okay, it didn't drop in pitch undramatically; it was dramatic. Okay, so again, it doesn't need to be there. Okay. Seconds passed and the noise faded abruptly away. So I don't know if you can fade abruptly. Actually, I think it just faded away. How do you fade abruptly? Do you turn the fader control down really fast? So you just don't need. Instinctively isn't incorrect, and this is the point. Nothing here is incorrect. Okay, it's not grammatically wrong. It's not wrong English-wise. It's not sentence construction isn't incorrect, but it's just not good writing. Okay, now there's a distinction between correct English, correct grammar, correct, obviously, switch English for whichever language you're writing in. But there's a distinction between correct language and good writing. And in a scene where it's tense and urgent and stuff is about to go, happening, it's got to be fast, it's got to be punchy, it's got to be quick. The characters don't have a chance to react, and you've got to reflect that to the reader. Things have got to happen quickly. Okay. So again, abruptly, and so on and so forth. And which POV are we in? It's totally confused by this point. Okay, it's totally confused. Are we in Kiri? Are we in Maru? Or actually, no, we seem to have gone into omniscient narrator perspective again. So again, POV is important. All those kind of things. So that's kind of me picking holes. Now those are the common themes for my type of writing. So what I would say, coming back from this, is that there's a few things that are really, really important. POV is really important, and one of the things that most amateur writers get wrong early on, because they don't even notice they haven't done it, or they've done it incorrectly. So choose a POV for a scene and stick to it. That's really, really important. Trust your dialogue. Okay, your dialogue is your main way of communicating what your characters are like to the reader. Okay, so don't do what I did here and describe what the character is like to the reader. Okay, good writing allows the reader to make up their own minds about the character based on what they say. So this is very, very bad writing here, because I'm basically telling you, the reader, this is how I've designed the character. This sort of thing should be in my my law Bible, my offline, not to be read by the reader document about the character Kiri in this particular instance. That's where that should be. So that's okay for me as the writer to write in my own kind of research document. Okay, and in fact that's the sort of stuff that I do in fact do when I'm designing a character. So if I showed you, for example, let me go and get one. If I open, for those of you who've followed my Elite stuff, you'll know this. So if I go to my Elite stuff and I look up the where is it? Plot and approval. There we go. It's been a long time since I looked at this. Okay. So, for example, Lady Kahina to Tijani Loren Salome. Okay. Here's my law Bible for the character as it was when I wrote the book. Okay, so Kahina is dark haired, she has grey eyes, she's average height and build, her features are strong and memorable but a shade away from beautiful when considered next to her two older sisters. She's strong and fit as a result of fit of all training, and she's a strong imperial accent. She's snobbish and haughty to most ears. Perfect for this document. Okay, this is not the document that you, the reader, get. You don't get this in the story. This is for me as the writer to go, what's this character like? Okay, so key mannerisms. Kahina has a habit of running her hand through her hair when she's thinking or considering something. She forms snap judgments and acts on them, often making mistakes as a result. She is aggressive and sharp-tongued, considered arrogant and intolerant by many. That's fine. That's for me, the writer. Okay, I've got that in my head. I can go back and refer. What would Kahina do in this situation? She'd slap somebody with a sword or whatever it happened to be. Okay, that's okay to put in this document, but it shouldn't be in the book. It shouldn't be in the story. Okay. So that bit there is perfect for the the lore guide, but it's not perfect for the story. Okay. You use that sort of stuff to help you write good dialogue, which reflects the way the character actually operates. So spend a lot more time on your dialogue than you otherwise would. Getting your characters to say the right things such that they're giving the impression to the reader of the kind of person they are is really, 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 really important. You'll notice this a lot in modern TV and film. Okay, is that a lot more quality work in some ways has been done on some of the dialogue in some of the films, and I qualify this because there's some really, really ropey dialogue out there as well. But in where it's done well, there's a lot of emphasis placed on good dialogue, and dialogue that sounds like the sort of things that people would actually say. Dialogue is hard to get right. Okay, so there's quite a lot of stuff, and we'll do a bit an in-depth on dialogue in a bit. But in short, one of the big areas that people get wrong in dialogue is they make long speeches. Okay, now you're listening to me on the stream, and I am doing a long speech because there's only me here, and you guys are just text on the screen. But in real life, if you listen to people having a conversation, nobody stands up and says a paragraph. Okay, they just don't do that. Okay, so if you've got people in your scene making paragraph long speeches, it's not realistic. Okay, for the vast majority of scenes. Okay, if you listen to people talk to each other, they will interrupt each other. They will cut across each other. They will interrupt each other. They will argue. They will complete each other's sentences. So a typical dialogue might be things like, "So are we going to Tesco? Yeah. We'll go. I just need to pick up. What's that stuff that we need? Do you know the what, the keys? No, not the keys. No, the jars. The jars? Oh yeah, the jars. Oh yeah, with the that sort of stuff. Okay, that's how dialogue actually happens in real life. What you don't hear in dialogue is, we need to go to Tesco's. What we'll do when we get there is we'll pick up the jars, we'll pick up the keys, then we'll go and visit Auntie May, and then on the way back we'll do the thing. Okay, that's not how people talk. All right, so be very careful with your dialogue to go, is this actually realistic the way people are going to talk? Because your dialogue is really important to make it sound natural. Your characters sound stone. That's probably just me. So a general rule, again, you can break it. A general rule is keep your dialogue short. Okay, quite short sentences before another character takes over, because that's generally what happens in real life. Okay, and another thing is, and again, not a hard and fast rule, but a general rule is, unless you're trying to attract somebody's attention very, very specifically, you almost never use a person's name when you're speaking to them. Okay, if you listen to people having a conversation, they don't go, "Well, Jim, the answer to that particular question is this." And thanks, Mary, for introducing that topic of conversation into this particular forum, because as Simon said over there, it's very important for us to get this right. And in fact, Jane said this earlier on. We don't do that, because what we tend to do is we indicate the person that we're thinking, "Oh yeah, and yeah, I agree with that. Definitely. Yeah, that's a really, really good point. Yeah. I think what you're saying is important too." Okay, we don't mention the names, and your dialogue also needs to reflect that. Okay, now there's a way to test your dialogue. Okay, and this is hard, but trust me, it's really, really useful to try and make it work for you. Read it out. Okay, read it out loud. Don't read it in your head, because reading it in your head doesn't work. Okay, you have to read it out loud to a mirror. Okay, and this is really important. Now, it sounds a bit wacky, but if you read your dialogue out, okay, if you read it out loud to yourself in a mirror from a printout or from your tablet or wherever it happens to be, you'll almost immediately sense whether or not your dialogue works. Okay, so flares and droughts. You should become a jester. You could help. How do you do that? It's okay as dialogue goes. It's not that amazing prose, but if your dialogue feels unnatural when you read it out to yourself, guess what? It's unnatural and it needs to be changed. All right. So if you can't read it out loud to yourself without it feeling forced and a bit kind of uncanny valley, do people really sound like that? Yeah. If it doesn't work when you read it out loud, it's not right. Okay, that's a good general rule of thumb for dialogue. If you can't read it out to yourself and make it sound convincing, it isn't right. Go fix it. It needs tweaking, it needs changing, it needs shortening, it needs altering, whatever it happens to be. Okay, it's a hard skill, and it sounds really awkward. And you do need to. One thing that's important is do tell other people who may share your accommodation what you're doing. Okay, because if you suddenly start yelling out really obscure bits of dialogue for no obviously good reason in front of a mirror, people may think you've lost touch with reality. Okay, which as a writer you may be already suffering from, but particularly if your characters are saying unusual things. So just Just be aware of that one. I've had a few situations where people have stumbled into me in full. I'm going to murder you. You're going to regret that. Etc. 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 Okay. You know that classic Blackadder sketch where they're caught plotting the murder of the prince. Hopefully it won't be that bad, but that just bear that one in mind. So dialogue carries the story. Dialogue is incredibly important. Okay, because it's much more important than the saids and the demands and the snaps and the expectorations and ejaculations and all those kind of things, okay, and the exfoliations, whatever it is used. Don't use them. Concentrate on the dialogue, okay? It's really important. Now the other thing, description. My advice is, it's like seasoning on a steak. Okay, it's like seasoning on a steak or on a salad, depending on whether you're vegan or something. It is to be used sparingly. It's like spices. Okay, don't chuck a massive load of it on a scene because it will ruin it. Here for example, Kiri and Maru are on top of the hill. Okay, they're at the crest of the hill. There's an endless ocean. There's a bit of a glare of a setting sun. And that's kind of it. That's all I've given you. All right, you're on top of a hill. There's a setting sun. There's an ocean. Okay. Then a little bit later on, you get. It's obviously late in the evening. There's a star visible in the sky. Okay. The familiar red sun. Okay, so the star's red. That gives you a little bit of a sense of what the planet's like. And that's kind of it. I haven't given you much more description than that. What you must avoid doing is like setting up, and again, this is another sign of amateurish writing, is massive paragraphs of description, okay, to the nth degree. The hill was covered in heather which shone purple in the darkness as the darkness closed. The sky was a molten mix of hues from amber back to cyan and all colours in between, and birds squeaking in the trees, and the sun was setting and the ocean was lapping and the daffodils were daffing, and and there was a smell of perfume on the thing, etc. Okay, just it's too much. Okay, stop. Description. It. On one hand, you've done loads of world building as an author. Okay, so again, let me go back to my Elite Reclamation. Okay, so I wrote a bunch of stuff here about things. Okay, so system objects of note, and there's the Hiram's anchorage, and then there's all the different systems and blah 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 blah. And some of this I used. There's the star map, and this is why you do this, and this is how you pronounce things, and this is this and this, etc. Lots of world building. Okay, there's nothing wrong with world building. Okay, use it to make sure you've got the consistency, but don't dump all of that world building into your document, into your book, because it's just, to be honest, frankly, it's boring. If a lot of readers, if they see a great big chunk of description, basically saying, the spaceship was made of octagonal panels and it was a dark, huge. We know it's a spaceship. Okay, it's a spaceship. What are the characters doing? They'll skip your paragraph down to the next piece of dialogue because they can see where the dialogue starts again, and they don't need the description. And so be very sparing on description. Only what you need to tell the story. You can fill in little bits of detail later on when you've got the reader's attention. And they want, I'm happy to learn a little bit more about the spaceship now that we know it's a particular type of spaceship. But at the beginning, it's just a spaceship. What are the characters doing? Get to the characters. That's really important. So don't do too much description. Just do enough to set the scene, and then move on. Get the characters. Get everything flowing. Pacing. If everything is laid back and the characters are around the campfire and they're sort of chilling and having a drink, it's okay for the dialogue to be laid back and the bit of description to be there, and the characters can muse about things, etc. If a massive meteorite is crashing on them and there's debris flying everywhere, everything is on fire, things need to be a little bit more pacey, okay, a bit more abrupt. dialogue needs to be short. Description needs to be almost non-existent other than the essential details. Things need to move on fast. Okay, that's not the time for adverbs and adjectives. It's action, 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 until you get out of whatever the trouble is. So pacing is another thing in there. The adverbs I've already mentioned, and then basically all the superfluous text. Get rid of all the superfluous text. Don't info dump. Don't replace the seds unless there's a really, really, really good reason for doing so. And do not exceed your exclamation mark ration for the document, okay? Use them really, really, really sparing. In fact, if you can get away with not using them at all, even better. You allow 1 per 1,000 words, basically, is my rule, and that's that. So that goes. Now, that's quite a lot of stuff, and you can obviously go and refer to this stream again at any point in the future to remind you. Those are the kind of the key things that are really obvious, glaring mistakes that all writers make when they're starting out. Okay, I did. This is my document from not all that long ago, and it's riddled with amateurish bits of writing, which nowadays I would zap. Okay. Without thinking about it. So use that as a guide. It's not the thing with writing is that there aren't really rules. There are sort of accepted conventions of things, but you can bend and break the rules as much, But be aware what the rules are before you decide to discard them. It's kind of my advice, really, because there are things like the sort of things that I've shown you that if they're detected in a manuscript that you send to an agent or a publisher, you'll instantly, and I mean instantly, be zapped, out of the process. So if you are at all serious about getting your novel to, be professionally published, you've got to zap all of those errors. They can't be present in your manuscript when you set it off. Now, a good editor, this is where editors come in. Now, editors aren't cheap, but editors are incredibly, incredibly worthwhile, because the editor doesn't really care about the story. What they care about is making sure that your manuscript is as good as it can be. And a really good editor will help you fine-tune the story that you've got. But as a writer, you should be able to do quite a lot of that editing by taking the rules that I've just described and sorting quite a lot of stuff out for yourself. An editor will then come in and go, here's how you can improve it even further by doing this, 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 and this. So don't consider as even a good writer that you can go from writing to manuscript without going through an editor, because an editor is a totally different set of skills than a writer, and there are very few writers who can edit, and there aren't that many editors who can write. They are two totally separate skills, but they're both essential for ending up with a book. All right. So bear those sort of things in mind. So we'll talk about a bit of the structure of how you turn a book, how you turn a manuscript into a book in future streams. But that was kind of your basic, don't do this. Here's the really, really common basic errors. So I hope you found that interesting and or useful. It will vary a bit. Now, we've been talking mostly about fiction in terms of writing for books. There are differences, and I'm not an expert at all in things like screenwriting or non-fiction books. They're different variations. There'll be some commonalities, I'm sure, but there are differences in those kind of things and how you write those kind of documents. So you may need to find expert help from somewhere else if you want specifics on those. But each area has its own particular stuff. I know that Richie knows a bit about screenwriting, so maybe he can jump on the stream with me at some point in the future. We can have a chat through the pros and cons of how to write those sort of things. Those sort of things are important. Out of curiosity, how do editors get paid by the hour, retainer, or contract? Generally, most of the editors I've come across work on a flat fee per amount of words that they edit. That's how I've generally come across it. So you'll get basically per 1,000 words, it's going to cost you this much, kind of thing. So Richie's up for a stream on screenwriting. We'll have to do that at some point. That'd be quite good fun. So if you're hiring freelance and they charge per word, usually sometimes it will be built into the contract you have with the publisher. The publisher will basically say you will use our editor and you will do what they say. Otherwise, we won't publish your book. It depends on the structure. Okay, there's lots and lots of different ways of those things being paid. I've usually dealt with freelance editors. Yeah, the mistake of paying programmers for each line they write, that's not a good way to pay programmers, but it's okay for editors because obviously if you kept your book nice and succinct, then then it will cost you less. Okay, so it's a good way to be succinct and snappy with your writing. So yes, that's how editors get paid. We'll talk a bit about editors and agents and publishers and the structure of things, but editors are not cheap. Okay, editing is a proper skill, and editors are not cheap. And we'll talk a bit also in a future stream about the actual finances of writing, because I mentioned in last week's stream it's not generally a road to riches. It really isn't. Most people who write books are writing them because they like writing and they like telling stories. Some of them will be doing it for the money and the fame, but the vast majority of them will be disappointed with the outcome because it's so rare to become rich and famous through writing a book. It isn't impossible, but it's very, 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 very rare. But your chances can only be improved by being a better writer. So there we go. So there we go. So yes, we'll talk about all those things. Those are things that are all upcoming on future streams. So we'll concentrate on those in the future. But for now, my friends, thank you very much. I hope that's been useful. I hope you haven't minded me ripping myself apart from an editing perspective, just to show you that even people like me make errors, right? So hopefully that was useful. I won't say that because I want to leave it in its bad state. So there we go. So lovely to see you all on the stream. Thank you very much. For those of you who are kind of lurking in the stream, that's absolutely fine. Don't feel under any pressure to comment or anything. It's absolutely fine if you've picked something up. For those of you watching afterwards on YouTube, hello. See you whenever that is. And we'll be back next week with more stuff. I'm just trying to remember. I can't remember what I'm doing next week. I think it's it might be something about grammar. It might be something else, but we'll see how it goes. It will be a topic, a basic topic about writing from there on. So there we go. So take care, my friends. Have a good week ahead. Richard, we'll have a chat offline about doing screenwriting stuff because I'd be interested in that. Because it's not something I know about. My grammar is 93. So yes, that would be good fun. And yeah, we'll come back around for those kind of things. It's all writing related. It's all kind of good stuff. So be good, my friends. Take care. See you soon. I'm back on Thursday with No Man's Sky, hopefully finishing that expedition. Friday is our Star Citizen stream. Saturday is actually a surprisingly popular one with the retro stream with excuse me, with what's it called? X Beyond the Frontier. So that should be quite good as well. So that'll be awesome. Right, but anyway, until then, take care. See you soon. Have a great week, and I'll see you on. And always write on. Take care, my friends. Bye bye now.